let us join in a spirit of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we deepen into our service, and I'll share our opening words for this morning. This reading comes from Ren Bellevrant's Grace and is titled In Praise of Technology and Social Media. In praise of computers and routers and servers and all the hardware and software that can help us build our connectedness. In praise of all the gremlins that live in the machines and bug our programs and help us to practice patience. In praise of the trolls who dwell in the internet and push us to live out our first principle in real time. In praise of power surges that eat our data and devour our final draft, for giving us the opportunity to rebuild and remember that our work is as much transient as it is transcendent. In praise of the error page not found, which reminds us that with some people we need to find new paths to make connections, because not everyone uses the same keywords. In praise of servers that drop our connections, which reminds us that all who serve have built-in limits to their capacity. In praise of communication and connection, whether it is face-to-face or Facebook to Facebook. We always risk errors, hurt feelings, and misunderstandings, but it is also always worth the risk.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marnie Piehl, and I'm a longtime member, and I'm active in the Growing and Deepening Council. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the 7 principles. So they're on the back of our program, but today in the new year, I often sit down and think about the new year a little bit, and it's often a time of reflection, resolving, and looking ahead. And this new year, I felt the need to ground myself in our faith tradition. So my resolution, so to speak, because I've been avoiding resolutions a little bit, is to answer these small questions. Why am I here? What binds me to you? That one's easier. What is this all about? I mean, I have 365 days, it's fine. In the past, much of my commitment here at the UU has been grounded in my children's needs. More accurately, in my needs for them. And I've spoken of this before at this pulpit in a This I Believe program. I really wanted them to have a big, diverse, and loving lens to the world. Growing up in Mandan, North Dakota, I wanted them to be grounded in something bigger than themselves that will really serve as their North Star and their guide. But they are growing and nearing launch. So why am I here? Why am I here? And in thinking about it, I know that my answers are all grounded in our 7 principles. They are the thing that struck me the most when I started becoming familiar with the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition. You can find them in our program. They're right here, of course. And as we go forward, it's important to note that an 8th principle has been adopted by many congregations. Mary Wilson was able to help me understand this a little bit more. But all the principles in general are under review and discussion because ours is a living, dynamic tradition. And that's a really good thing, unless you've been working on a sermon all week and then you find that out and you have to redo it on Saturday. It's fine. No, it's fine. No, I kind of knew it, but I'd sort of forgotten it, and Mary helped me ground, and that was really good. So for now, in this moment in time, for real, we have 7 official principles in this tradition. And an 8th that's been adopted by many. But we're also guided by 6 sources, which I'm not going to talk about today, but they are really great to review as well. And they're all recognized, and the 7 principles and 8th principle are all recognized by the congregations who choose to be a part of the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is the larger group that we're a part of. Now, the principles are our strong values and moral guides. As Reverend Barbara Wells Ten Hove explains, the principles are not dogma or doctrine, but rather a guide for those of us who choose to join and participate in Unitarian Universalist religious communities. The 7 principles are the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And then the eighth principle, which, as I said, has been adopted by many individual Unitarian congregations and is moving towards a larger acceptance, which reads, we covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So much like the children's story we just heard, the be kind and how it reverberates, I think every one of these principles ties into that in some way, shape, or form. When I first considered this program, my plan was to pull something together for early January in which we cover all the principles and we'll just bomb through them, and then my New Year's resolution as it sits is done, and I'm winning, and it isn't even February. That was my plan. But discovering and remembering that in the great tradition of Unitarian Universalism, all of the principles are currently being discussed, reconsidered, and pondered at the national level, was the first thing that slowed my roll. As Dennis Lyons said recently, we're fortunate to be engaged in a religion willing to assess its foundations and adapt as time passes. And that is so true. We are not rigid and hidebound and stuck in old ways. We are always trying to grow as an organization and as a faith tradition. The second thing that slowed me down is I realized that efficiency is not a great basis for thoughtful discussion. And today, I'm hoping we have some thoughtful discussion. I, of late, have found that my tendency toward efficiency is pretty inefficient. I did this sort of same thing at the Mandan Library last week. I don't know how many of you live in that area or have been to the newly remodeled Mandan Library, but it's really beautiful. It's really light-filled. And I got inside and I got so excited. And the books are just laid out so enticingly, and it guides you around. And every time I'd turn a corner, I want to read that. And I ended up, and I was kind of had a certain amount of time I could be there. And so I staggered to the counter. I staggered. I had a lot of books. And as I struggled to set them down, the guy at the desk sort of looked at me, and I looked at him and I said, I think my eyes are bigger than my time. So I did return some books because that was kind of selfish to take all those really good books, I thought. But today, my first concept, my eyes were bigger than our time and also bigger than thoughtful discussion. So we're not going to cover 8 principles. We're not even going to cover 7 principles today. We are going to talk about 1, the first. So as we kick off a new year here at the Bismarck Mandan Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and Congregation, let's talk about the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. This principle is very easy to feel good about. Of course I do that. I'm a liberal. I'm working in the light. I'm an ally. I'm a water protector. I believe in equality for all. I'm an environmentalist. But when push comes to shove, how are you really doing on this one? How are we doing? So I ask it right now because, well, I had a moment last night where I failed and a friend called me on it. When I asked her, we were talking about mutual acquaintances, and I turned to her and I said, do you like them? And she, without knowing about this, said, yeah, you should give them a chance, and sort of schooled me on these people. And I thought, wow, I'm failing in the thing I'm going to talk about tomorrow. So a lot to discuss. Anyway, I think the timing is good to talk about this as we enter into the North Dakota legislative session. And I think in this organization here, we are across the street from there, and we spend these months somewhat tortured. If you've been around a while, we spend a lot of time having a lot of angst about what goes on. It's a super duper majority over there, and they'll be introducing bills that hurt us, that we struggle with, a lot of us and a lot of our people. They'll be introducing bills that affect Indigenous people, the LGBT community, families, and the environment. And it is going to be a true challenge to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of all people in the coming months. Because by all people, I mean lawmakers who introduce hateful, hurtful legislation. Because we aren't talking about the worth and dignity of people we like or admire, or even people we agree with. We are talking about affirming and promoting the worth and dignity of all the people. In an interview with Dr. Terry Milbauer, a psychologist at Fort Wayne Unitarian Universalist congregation that was in the UU World magazine, Dr. Milbauer talks about how the principles, especially the first, are deeply demanding. He says, the first one asks me to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. So now I have to struggle with the worth and dignity of people who do unspeakably awful things. I'm supposed to value the democratic process, hearing the voice of everyone equally, allowing everyone to have a say. He encourages a deeper embrace of the principles and has a creative approach to getting there. So he suggested, let's stick something onto the end of every principle that will stop people from smiling and nodding comfortably as they are read, as I did. Of course I do that. Yeah, I totally do that. So remember when you were a kid and you would tack on, when you were little, like if somebody said something, you tack on at the end, you'd say, in the bathtub. And then maybe when you got older and you were 12, you'd be like, in bed. And you thought that was so funny. So you could add that to sayings or hymns. The examples he gives is, abide with me in bed, or rejoice always in the bathtub. So I got the giggles about that. But he suggested using the same theory for the first principle, but attaching at the end instead, beginning in our homes and congregations. So we tack this onto the first principle. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, beginning in our homes and congregations. So taking the first principle to heart, as Unitarian Universalists ask us to do, is what other religions ask their followers as well. The way UU minister Reverend Ellen Beth Cooper talks about this, she says, you carry within you something ineffable, something that Christianity names being made in the image of God, and which Buddhism names the potential Buddha nature of all people, and that which is expressed in the Hindu greeting, Namaste. That which is divine in me honors what is divine in you. And so that brings me to the interactive portion of this, because I'm hoping we can have a conversation a little bit. Just as I was forced to reckon with my own not upholding the first principle over dinner last night, I'd just like to talk a little bit. I'm hoping to open it up, and Mary will help by bringing a microphone around. And we'll also, if there's chat, we'll make sure we lean over and look to our virtual audience. But I want to start by asking a question, and I hope we can move this and have some good discussion. And the first question I would like to ask you is, as a Unitarian or a friend of this faith tradition, what does it mean to you to affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, beginning in your home or in congregation? Or you could replace that with your workplace and community, or in the halls of the state capitol, Don. So that's my first question. What does that mean to you? What does that look like for you? And I'm hoping we can talk.
For me, what comes to mind is learning how to cultivate that in myself first and let that be okay, and that keep being a practice. Like, how do I, it sounds selfish on the surface to say, how do I have the inherent worth and dignity in myself? But if you come from abusive family or trauma or anything like that, that's missing. You did not experience that. You didn't get that foundation or that ground level of like, I'm inherently worthy. And so how can you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Although I wrote a song called Drink from This Empty Cup. So as you keep going then, and you at some point in this journey, in this space, in this community, I had that shift and I experienced that healing. And then you keep going. And I think if you start to posture again and you start to say, well, of course I value, or I do this, then it's already become shallow. It's become like a facade, like a fake thing, instead of digging back
Righteousness.
Into, like self-righteousness, like, yeah. And it's kind of painful and like, this constant like working on it. It's like having to go to the gym and keep going to the gym to keep feeling into where is that coming from? Where is that acceptance coming from? Where is that like dignity coming from me? How do I keep doing that?
somewhere in the Bible, I don't know if the Old Testament, New Testament said, love those who revile you. And that, I think that person got killed. But, it's just hard. And it's hard to see people in the light who are voting for laws that want to keep you down or, oppress others. And how do you love your oppressors? That's the struggle. I do the working the spiritual muscle, trying to just remember, praying, doing like what Alicia said, working within myself. But not to sometimes.
Hello. I just wanted to talk about this golden rule to treat others how you want to be treated yourself. And this legislative session, when I'll be there, I'll have to remember when I'll testify, let's say for LGBT, for trans kids. I proposed the platinum rule a while ago to treat them how they want to be treated. My kid, who's a trans, reminded me that some of the expressions that I use in I thought respectful and loving way, they're actually not perceived as such. So I got some other formulations I learned from how specifically would you like me to address that? Or when I ask my patients, how would you like me to formulate these solutions or grievances? So not only to talk lovingly and protectively, but also respecting their lingo and their way of relating that may be so different from the boomer me.
Couple things is I find it's helpful to slow down. If I'm going too fast, then I just full speed ahead and I'm not listening and thinking what I'm thinking and wanting is the most important thing. So slowing down, taking a deep breath, and listening, and certainly with people that we're disagreeing back and forth, is I had to really practice this recently for 9 months of just not responding to everything, just waiting until there's something that we're talking about that's a common ground, that's some kind of either a value or there's some kind of an agreement on something, and then you can build from there. Because we're not going to solve every problem in one conversation in 2 minutes. So let the stuff go until you find common ground, and then I can, we'll get to those disagreements at some point. It just because I let them go at the beginning doesn't mean that they're not really important, and we'll get back to them. It's like it kind of decreases the angst of disagreeing.
To build on that, I've got just a question about, how are there other ways we can speak and act with tolerance when we disagree with someone? Because I think that's the hardest thing and the most important lesson right now. And I think this first principle really leads to that, the inherent worth of date. But how do you get there? Because as you said, you learned that the hard way walking all those miles.
I'm sorry, Don, but can I vent first before I affirm your worth and dignity? I had this experience with one of my brothers, and I vented simply because I was listening too long and not expressing my concerns. And I vented, and I feel ashamed about that. I shouldn't have vented like that. But give my brother credit. He was quiet, listened maybe. He stared off into the distance, kind of like what my dog does when he pretends to listen. So at any rate, don't get to the point of having to vent, express yourself when you need to, that sort of a thing. affirm the other person, but affirm yourself too.
So I feel like we're doing it again. Like, so how do I affirm your worth and dignity when you, and why should I? That's the hard part. You're affirming the fact that my kid doesn't deserve to work, live in a place, or live on the planet, or even exists. That's the rub for me. You disaffirm, just made that word up, the thing I care most deeply about in the world. Yet I'm supposed to affirm your belief in your, not your belief, but your goodness. This is all great, but that's where it's the hard for me. That's where the rubber meets the road for me. Yeah. And so I can't yet's my favorite word, but like that's for me where it's hard. How do I get past that? I get it, democracy, but
That's a great question. Should you get past it?
right, why?
Do you have to get past it? What do we think?
I mean, parents of victim murders get over it, right? They forgive. I'm not there yet. And I don't know I don't even know where the exit is, let alone say, the road.
No, don't be sorry. That's the question.
Hi, I'm Pat. I'm new here. I totally hear you on that. But I really believe in the power of one. And so speaking our truths from our heart with an open heart and open mind sometimes plants a seed that people can grow from. I too get very frustrated and I own my feelings. It's me getting frustrated and not to push it onto them, even if their truths don't coincide with mine. So I try to listen with the same way I speak, with an open mind and an open heart. That doesn't mean that it's always in agreement.
Hi, I'm Matt. I always think about two things in this principle. And the first is that everyone is the star of their own movie, and no one wakes up that morning and thinks I'm going to be the bad guy. And it's hard because I grew up in Bismarck and then spent 20 years in Minneapolis, and coming back is a very different landscape that I remember leaving, even if it actually isn't. I grew a lot in 20 years and certainly became much further to the left than I was when I left, even though I thought I was fairly liberal when I left. And now seeing my parents' friends and other folks who I really respected just post very hateful things. And then when you're talking with them and with them in person, they're the people that would give you the shirt off their back. And so it's this very odd dichotomy. So I try and think about that they are, in their mind, they are not the bad guy, right? And then I try and assume positive intent. So whatever they're doing that I'm disagreeing with, like what could a possible positive reason for that action be? Even if I don't agree with it, it allows me to see them as a person. And it's a struggle, a lot of the time, but it allows me to keep interacting with them. And I think what you're saying, finding some common ground when that time is right, then you can start to, at least I try and start to move them a little bit away from such radical positions that they've taken. Their beliefs are not them, their actions are not them. Like their inherent worth is different than some of the things that they espouse. People can change.
So I'll close with this reflection on the first principle from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker. She's a minister, theologian, and author. And so she says, Reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of Unitarian Universalist faith. We believe that all the dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. Just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. The great 20th century Rabbi Abraham Heschel wrote, Unitarian Universalists affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person as a given of faith, an unshakable conviction calling us to self-respect and respect for others. Thank you.
Our chalice extinguishing words this morning come from Cynthia Landrum. Be true, be well, be loving. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving.
Let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart shine through. Love upon love upon love, our hearts are beating as one. Light upon light upon light, shining as bright as the sun. Last time. Let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart shine through. Let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart shine through. Love upon love upon love, our hearts are beating as one. Light upon light upon light, shining as bright as the sun. Let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart, let the weight of the heart shine through.